Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be a review of Stargirl Season 2 premiere titled Summer School Chapter 1. Now there will likely be spoilers in this episode, so if you haven't watched it yet, I advise you to go away, catch up with the episode and then come back to this overall review. Now of course the second season follows the first, which I felt overall was a very strong first year for the show, embracing very much of that brighter, optimistic tone with a very good lead performance by Brett Bassinger, with good support from Luke Wilson as her father Pat Dugan, and the real strength of the show came from the villainous characters, which I thought were very well developed, imposing and very scary personalities. Now of course season 1 concentrated on Courtney Whitmore coming into contact with the magical staff and recruiting a team of superheroes to take on the Injustice Society. So in terms of the second season, the opening episode I think was a solid episode, very well put together, not really action packed, but it was far more concentrating on catching up with these characters and setting up many interesting story arcs that will play out throughout the rest of the season. It still has that very high glossy sheen of superhero brightness about it. Again, when I was watching this episode, I still very much got so much of those Smallville vibes and tones that we associated so much throughout that show, but there were also very much hints of darkness throughout the episode, and this is very much emphasised in the episode's opening scene, where we started off with a flashback decades ago with a young girl in a small town village named Rebecca, and she steals a birthday present from a party, and she opens it up and she sees a damaged doll which ends up becoming possessed by a gem, and it basically takes over her influence, and we see a young boy standing alongside her, and this is basically the origin of the main villain Eclipso, who will more than likely be exhibited by the powers of this dark gem, essentially being able to influence people's darker tendencies. And if you remember, we saw Cindy under the influence of this gem at the end of the season finale for season 1, so that will play out later on throughout this episode. We later catch up with Courtney and the others hunting down any remnants of the Injustice team, and we see Courtney becomes much more focused with her role as Stargirl rather than her school life. We get various references to both the Flash and the Green Lantern in their conversation with Pat in the basement, and we later on get a glimpse of the Green Lantern battery in her basement overall, and this will play a role later on throughout the episode. And I think overall we're going to focus a lot more on Courtney and her obsession with becoming Stargirl, and her over-enthusiasm in the role gets her into trouble when she attacks a student for no reason in the cafeteria. I believe this was the daughter of Tigress and the Sportsmaster, I believe, from season 1. And the implications of this means that she has to stay in summer school, preventing the family from going on their planned vacation. And this overall struggle and obsession with her superhero life, as I mentioned before, will be a main story arc, and I'm pretty much sure that the constant insistence from Courtney in being Stargirl will have some big repercussions later on throughout this season. We see Beth still struggling to adjust to life without the Dr. Midnight AI. She's failing to reboot it, and then she comes to the later startling discovery that both her parents are filing for divorce, and this is a shocking revelation because she always deems them to be the perfect couple. And when you look at the parents overall, it's that classic case of both individuals having very much successful careers and basically not having time to be involved with one another. So I think that will be the main reasons for why they're filing for divorce. Whether Beth will be able to get her parents back together, we will wait and see. We catch up with Yolandi, who is still suffering from PTSD from the encounter with Brainwave, which basically saw his son getting killed, of whom, if you remember, she had a relationship in the beginning prior to then him exposing her photos, and that's what forced her into becoming a recluse from her college life. So she tries to see a priest and she keeps getting these flashbacks, and we get this quite intense scene where we see the darkening of the church and we see her expressing that she's very worried about it overall. So that gives a lot of interesting elements as to where we will see the direction of the character. We see that Rick also seems to be struggling in terms of integrating himself back into the college life. We have the earlier scenes where he's walking into the forest and he sees big massive footprints. So this is hinting that maybe he's trying to lure out Solomon Grundy. If you remember, he had that intense and brutal fight sequence in the season 1 finale. And then we see later on that he's leaving out these large buckets of chicken. So that's what maybe leads me to believe that he is trying to lure out Solomon Grundy. Again, we don't know why. We'll see later on how that develops. But again, he's having another bout of internal struggle juggling his own individual life with coming forward with his own superhero powers as well. And we have that earlier scene when he has that clash with the teacher because he scored a perfect score within an exam. She was very suspicious and asks him to take the test again, and then he strolls out. We think he's basically quitting school, so we'll see the fallout from that as well. We see the original Starman reappear after we saw him at the end of the season 1 finale. He goes into a diner, still searching for Pat Dugan, and I think he comes across a waitress who was Pat's ex-wife, I believe. So we're going to follow on from that particular story. How will the fallout be when he eventually meets up with Pat, and also when he reconnects with Courtney? Will he want to encounter and recollect the magical staff? How will that react when it comes back to seeing the original bearer of the weapons? We then see the further development when Courtney talks to Icicle's son in the street, who also met his death at the end of the season 1 finale. And then we see Icicle's parents looking at her, very concerned because they know who she is as well. They were very much in tandem with Icicle and what he was trying to do in terms of his initiatives back in season 1. So eventually, I'm sure we'll see Icicle's son develop powers himself, and he will come into conflict with Courtney as well once they reveal to him her role as Stargirl. And then we move on to the scene which I'm sure would have got a lot of fans excited, which was the one and only action set piece throughout the episode, and it was of course the fight between Courtney and Jade Scott, who it turns out to be the daughter of the original Green Lantern Alan Scott. This is basically the fight sequence that we saw from the trailers, and it was a very short but very visually well choreographed sequence where we see them fighting in the hallway, and we see Jade exhibiting the blast of the Green Lantern ring, and we see her blasting Courtney back. Very good sequence. And then we see the parents coming down and Jade announces her identity. Basically, she came back for her Green Lantern battery, so we'll see how prominent she'll be overall throughout the show. Will she just appear for 1 or 2 episodes, or will they do what they normally do throughout the CW shows and have her appear briefly in this season, and then maybe she'll become much more of a regular for season 3, which has already been renewed by the CW. And then we come to the final scene where we see Cindy going back to the Injustice base and collating photos from school files of students, essentially looking like she's going to plan to recruit a younger group of supervillains to take on the Justice Society. And when we go through all of these photos, we see that one of them is Mike, of course, Courtney's brother. So be interesting to see what plan she's got for Mike in general. And then we see her again under the influence of the Eclipso gem. Will we get a roundabout story where we see that Eclipso battles the original Justice Society to begin with, and maybe somehow they defeated him or traps the gem, and now he wants to overall come back and get the revenge? So I'm pretty sure we'll get some sort of big flashback sequence or flashback episode tying Eclipso to the original Justice Society team. What will also be interesting is if we get a Green Lantern centric episode, maybe we get further mentions perhaps of a Hal Jordan or a Guy Gardner or a John Stewart further on down the line. We do know that HBO and Warner Brothers do plan to produce a Green Lantern series, I do believe. So will we get any hints of that within this show? We'll wait and see as well. So overall, I think this was a solid episode. As I mentioned at the start of this video, not necessarily coming out with a huge banger in terms of explosive action and set pieces, but really just getting us really settled back down with the original characters of the first season, and also setting up a lot of interesting plot points throughout the second season overall. So I was very pleased with it, and overall this second season looks to continue the good form from the first season, as I said before, maintaining that bright positive tone, but also giving us very scary moments and promising very intense characters for the villains. So if it can continue that good momentum set from the first season, then we could be on to another great superhero show in Stargirl overall. So those are my thoughts and feelings and review of the second season premiere episode of Stargirl. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please also hit and like those subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content and reviews like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.